of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show. Well, happy Monday there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show, and thank you, yes, for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, and today we have a returning guest. He ran for PA State Senate back last election cycle. This time he's running for Lieutenant Governor. But before we get there, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor. Yes, that is the Expat Money Summit 2022, November 7th through November 11th. 5 days, 30 expert speakers. Mikkel Thorup from the Expat Money Show, he will be hosting that. And I promise you, if you join, it'll be a week worth of watching, but you will reap the benefits for generations. Head over to briannicholsshow.com/expat and grab your free tickets today. Yes, I mentioned our guest. He did run for PA State Senate back last election cycle. This election cycle, he is running for Lieutenant Governor, the one, the only Tim McMaster. Welcome back to the Brian Nichols Show.
It's great to be here. I don't know if I can quite live up to all that hype, but thanks. Thanks very much.
Tim, welcome back to the program, my friend. It's great to have you on the show. And you're
back, Brian.
You're doing a lot of fun, exciting things here in the world. Yeah, you ran for state senate here back last election. Yep. Now you're running for lieutenant governor.
In between, I ran for and won auditor for my local township here, and was actually appointed the chair of the audit committee. So it seems like we just never stop.
Now, shame on me, Tim. Shame on me, because I completely forgot that you ran for town auditor. Congratulations, yes.
Thank you.
You get to be in elected office with the big L next to your name, right?
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. And here in Pennsylvania, we're pretty blessed through a lot of hard work and a lot of really smart people, a lot of hardworking people. We have over 200 elected Libertarians in office right now in Pennsylvania, which is more than the other 49 states combined.
Wow. That's impressive. And now I will confess, I did just leave the Keystone State. I moved over to become a Hoosier. I'm now over in Indiana. So
That's okay. I'll let that slide.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And, I think the Hoosiers here will let it slide too. They've embraced me with open arms. But I've seen, yes, PA has had the chance to really make a strong name for itself in the libertarian circles electorally, especially when you look at local politics. And let's talk about that, Tim, because when you were last in the show, and we mentioned it here a couple times at the beginning, you were running for state senate, and yes, we've seen there's been a resurgence, especially in the political discourse, to get away from the national conversation. I mean, the national conversation seems to be dictated more towards cultural conversations more than anything. The real like meat and potatoes of how we have found the most success in bringing our ideas to your average person beyond that cultural conversation has been through local and state politics. So let's talk about really quickly your attention in really what you've experienced in running for state and local politics. What's been the reception? What's been the feedback? And what have you found have been some of those top of mind issues that voters consistently bring up to you time and again?
It was great. I don't know how I can follow all that, but it's been great. Especially having the local office, being elected to that, because it really puts me out front and center with the local people. And as they say, all politics is local, and I truly believe that, because every issue that we kind of face on the local issue, if you just expand that out, essentially that's on the state level, on the national level as well, with some exceptions. But overall, I mean, people are concerned about the same things: how they're going to feed their kids. Are they going to raise their kids properly? How are they going to educate their kids? Are they going to have anything to leave their kids? Is it going to be all taken through property taxes or some other kind of government extortion program? Those are really the top of mind things that I've really been focusing on, and I've really been talking to the people about is how as a libertarian first, a small L libertarian, I can or we can expand their freedom through I apologize, my dog is losing.
He's part of the interview. It's fine.
Now he's got me distracted. Hang on a second. Sorry, had to let the boss know he had to go out. So through small L libertarianism, we can really get people to focus on what matters to them, which is the things that they can control. Taking responsibility for their own their own money, for taking responsibility for how they educate their kids, taking responsibility for how they or what they do on their own property. I think that's kind of the core tenets of small L libertarianism, is that I'm going to do I'm going to do what I'm going to do here, and it's not going to impact your rights. You do what you're going to do over there, so long as it doesn't impact my rights.
Yeah, and let's really quick before we go more into your running for office. Let's talk about really quick this conversation about the reception of the small L. I appreciate you using the small L
Sure.
signification there, because you do see there has been a resurgence and an appreciation of this small L libertarianism that's really it's been thrust almost into the national conversation by Elon Musk. And this is something I think we're gonna I don't know if we're gonna see the coattail effect immediately, but I would dare say we're going to see some coattails sometime in the near future, be it people who are inspired now to stand up and speak their values. This is something I've been trying to really talk about when I'm speaking to business owners, entrepreneurs, is going out and being your authentic self, not being afraid of speaking your values, and knowing that there are people out there who will appreciate that because they've been afraid of speaking their values behind closed doors themselves. But then you go to the other side, you do see now there is not so much this this fear of retribution, and more so an acceptance of alternative ways of thinking. So do you see this going forward? Do you see this helping us in the big L libertarian camps, and we'll say our pro liberty friends, both on the right, and I will say sometimes in the Democratic Party, though as I talked about with Kenny Cody in the show, they're fewer and far between. But with that being said, do you see this helping us when we are talking about that cultural conversation, moving the pendulum towards our way?
Anytime that you can get the majority of people, or what we like to call the old dying parties, if you can get members of those parties and members of the general public talking about and thinking about their own liberty, thinking about their own rights, that's going to be a win, whether it's for small L libertarianism or capital L Libertarian Party. It's going to be a good thing as long as it's shifting that pendulum more towards more freedom and more liberty. I think that's a good thing. I think as far as coattails, I don't think we're going to see too much of it this year. Depending on how it goes in the Twitterverse and with Elon, I think maybe 2024 could see some serious coattail action, I guess. But I don't see that necessarily on a national scale. I think that's going to be far more localized. They're going to have, people like me who run for the local office. And maybe we'll run for a bigger office, but failing that, we'll run for another smaller office, or we'll run for re-election, or we'll inspire somebody else who's, maybe liberty-minded like themselves to run for a local office. Maybe they run for a constable or township supervisor, school board, something like that. It's gonna put capital L libertarians in front of people more, and they're gonna see that we're not crazy boots on our head, kind of wackos, although there is a special place in the party for folks like that. But that we're just people that want our kids to be freer than we were. And I can't think of any simpler way to say that.
Tim, you made me laugh because I'm going back to our Friday episode with our good buddy there, Chris Goizetta. He's a marketing professor, and he helps us talk about where we go wrong when we're trying to reach out to our target markets, or when are we talking to our target markets. And we talked about the top 3 ways that libertarians scare away the normies, or actually we said the liberty curious. But we see this, and you referred to it, is unfortunately, yes, the boot on head, blowhorn in hand, screaming on the corner type of person that has been too often the libertarian caricature, and we have to get past that. And I think that's why I'm so excited.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was a lot of that is actually what the mainstream is kind of thrusting out there. Like if you actually listen to what, and the boot on the head, for those that don't know, is Vermin Supreme. What Vermin actually says makes a lot of sense. When he starts talking about, economic policy and foreign policy of non-interventionalism, these things make sense, and they are consistent with the small L libertarian and capital L libertarian party. The problem is he puts a boot on his head, and that's what the media focuses on.
Well,
and for him,
but can you blame them? Can you blame them though? And I think that's the part.
No, I'm just saying, like we're giving them the ammunition to bludgeon us with.
Yeah. And so that's why we've talked about sales and marketing here, right? Like that's where I think we've gotten wrong. Like, yes, there's 2 different rules. There is the court jester role, right? The poking fun and drawing light to the disaster that is our federal government and what it has done to people. And Vermin plays that role well. But when people are looking to cast their vote, they're not looking to vote the jester in command of the castle, right? They're looking to make sure that they can vote for somebody that they can trust actually presents solutions to the problems they see. And candidly, that's why I like having folks like you on the show, because you give us the chance to get away from the characterization that the media has presented. And instead, it gives us a platform to present real libertarians who are running for real elected office and local positions, and then the real solutions that you're bringing to those individuals. And I mean, we've had you in the show, right? You talked about this from the state run back last time. Right now, you're in the role of auditor, so I'd love to hear more about that. And then now you're running for lieutenant governor. So Tim, let's very quickly, as the role of auditor, what is the direct impact of having a big L libertarian in that seat on the voters, number one? And then number two, what's been the feedback from those voters?
So the biggest impact is that as the capital L libertarian on the audit committee, is every time that my township wants to spend a dime, I'm the guy who's right there, waving the budget, saying this has not necessarily been approved. This has not necessarily been debated. The voters haven't had a chance to, approve this. And you guys need to justify that. And I think my camera just died. Sorry.
Yep. It's okay.
Sorry about that.
The audience got a nice view of me drinking from my Brian Nichols Show thermos, which you can get your Brian Nichols Show sticker over at briannicholsshow.com/shop. Tim, continue.
Okay. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties over here. Having the capital L libertarian in the auditor position, that's really exactly the position you want a libertarian in, because I am forcing the township supervisors to justify every single cent that they spend, every single cent that they try to tax, every single cent that comes through on any budget. I'm the guy who says, you need to justify this. So they don't really like me all that much in that role, which is good. I'm not there to make friends. I'm there to try and do some good in Conewago Township here. And so far, the reaction from the voters has been phenomenal. Like they will stop me on this. We were doing signature collections on primary day last week. And a lot of them recognize me from the township supervisor meetings. And, they want to shake my hand. They're like, thank you. Finally, somebody is saying, to these people, stop spending all of our damn money. Somebody is making them actually justify it. And whether or not they actually change their behavior at this point is kind of irrelevant, because it's got the entirety of my locality talking about how they're spending their money. They're thinking about how these three people on the board of supervisors are spending their tax money, how they're increasing their tax bill, and how they're not getting any services back for it. So it's definitely been an overall net positive, and we're not even 6 months into the position. So
that's what you like to hear. That means that libertarians are making a difference.
Yeah, and when they find out I'm a libertarian, they're like, "Huh, I will look into that more." And there now we've got one more check in the Liberty Curious box, and once we get them there, I mean, they start seeing what we're all about. 9 times out of 10, we've got a new libertarian.
Now, see, folks, what Tim did there was he's utilizing some of the techniques that we talk about over at the Brian Nichols Show's morning sales huddle, which if you have not had the chance yet, by the way, head over to briannicholsshow.com/selling liberty ebook. There we go. And you can sign up for our morning sales huddle, as well as get your free copy of 4 easy steps you can implement now to help sell liberty to friends and family. I will include that link in the show notes, as well as in the description here on YouTube for our YouTube watcher. And if, by the way, if you folks who are listening have had a chance to read 4 easy steps, please do me a favor. Go ahead and in the comments here on YouTube, tell me what your takeaways have been, or email me, brian@briannicholsshow.com. Love to hear that as well. But no, Tim, let's talk about now taking these ideas away from the local perspective, and now let's bring them to the state perspective. Right now, we know the state is not necessarily the end all be all. We always want to go back more towards the locality, but there is a role for us to play, politics at the state level. What are you seeing as right now the libertarian role in state politics? What are some of those top of mind issues that you want to make sure you're addressing?
So the biggest thing that we want to address is the tax rate here in Pennsylvania. Our sales tax rate keeps going up. The property tax rates keep going up. and we're not getting any more services for it. The only thing that's happening is the legislature in Harrisburg is voting themselves pay raises. And that's I can't think of another word for it, but that's just pure evil. They keep taking money from what they consider the tax cattle, us, the citizens, the voters, and to vote themselves a raise while the value of the dollar is in the toilet. There's food shortages, there's supply chain problems, but these, call them what they are, scumbags in Harrisburg in the General Assembly and in the executive are voting themselves brand new raises. Meanwhile, they're the fourth highest paid legislature in the country. It's ridiculous. So one of the big things that Matt Hackenberg, who's the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania's candidate for governor, and myself, the one thing that we're really focusing on is we want to get the tax rate as low as we possibly can. And to do that, we have to stop the spending in Harrisburg. And one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to enact a policy that every legislator in Harrisburg takes an immediate 50% pay cut across the board, period. Day one, 50% of your pay.
That'll make a lot of friends.
Well, good. I'm not there to make friends.
I like it.
Or we go back to being a part-time legislature because, really, they're out of session now and they won't be back in session until after the 4th of July. But their paychecks are going to still keep coming. And I believe that there is a place for the legislators to go back into their home districts and meet with the people and talk with the people. But there's no reason they should be getting paid constantly for that. There's plenty of other states that enact, Texas, Vermont, I believe, have part-time legislatures, and they do just fine. Their legislators come in a couple of months a year. They get done everything that they need to get done. Then they go back and they live under the laws that they've just passed so that they actually know what they're doing. They're actually still in their communities meeting their people. And that doesn't happen in Pennsylvania. If you see a Pennsylvania state legislator, either from the Senate or the House of Representatives, they're generally somewhere getting a photo op or getting a check. And that's just not something that I can imbibe. And one of the cool things about the lieutenant governor is one of their chief positions is to be the president of the state Senate, which means I could technically be the boss of the guy that beat me for the last job I ran for, which would be awesome. He doesn't like me too much either for largely the same reasons.
Well, I used to see a lot in Philadelphia. We'd see in election season, and whenever you'd walk into the shop right over when I lived in West Philadelphia, if it was election season, there was always a candidate of some sorts standing outside with their the brochures and stuff, and they were just handing out stuff. And it struck me funny that they're always there at election season, but they're never there afterwards saying, "How am I doing?" If they're elected, they're never there afterwards saying, "Talk to me about your issues." No, they'll be in DC or they'll be in Harrisburg,
right?
But they won't come back to this ShopRite and stand in this parking lot and see the mom who's pushing the cart out with tears in her eyes, knowing that it's getting harder trying to make her paycheck put the food in the cart to bring it home to her family. They don't get to see that. They can read about it in on Facebook and they can watch it in the YouTube channel, but they don't really see it up close and personal, unless, of course, Tim, they're asking for your vote.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I've always said is I said, like, don't, if you want to vote for me, that's great. But here's the things that I have done. Here's the things that I want to do. And for the love of God, hold my feet to the fire on it. If I say I'm going to do something and you see me not actively trying to get that done or not actually getting that done, call me out on it. All right. I'm an IT guy in my day job, but I also run a goat farm here. So the only way that I learn is if somebody tells me. If I'm doing something wrong, you got to tell me. And that's one thing that I'd never see with these politicians is they never come back and say, hey, how are we doing? Like you just said.
Yep. All right, Tim, this is probably the most important question I've asked today. You're running for lieutenant governor. What the hell does a lieutenant governor do?
So the biggest things that the lieutenant governor does, as I said earlier, is they're the president of the state Senate. So basically, they call the Senate to order. They recognize the speakers. They'll call for the bills to be advanced or anything. They don't really have any power, so it's largely like the chair of a party. They just kind of organize the meetings and stuff. But they do have a certain degree of, we'll say, a bully pulpit in there, which is what I would use to tell them, like, hey, you're taking a pay cut. The other thing that the lieutenant governor does is they're the chair of the pardons board. And one of my other passion projects is to see full restoration of rights, and pardons for anyone who's been convicted of a non-violent drug charge. Because there's so many drugs now that they're either legal or they're available with a prescription or this. There's no reason that these things should be illegal and ruining someone's lives for, say, a plant. So I would really push to have like everybody's records expunged, full pardons and full rights restoration. And apart from those two things, the other real thing that the lieutenant governor is supposed to do is go out and make speeches. I think I'm okay at that, but it seems like a waste. So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to, take that time where I'm supposed to be out giving speeches and stuff, and I'd like to have town halls with people and let them talk to me.
Yes.
Not me talk to them like a traditional speech, but do like what they used to call a listening tour. Where you go and say, "Hey, how's everybody doing? Talk to me. What's on your mind? What's bothering you? What can we do better? What are we doing good? I mean, hell, it's possible they could be doing something good in a general assembly. Unlikely, but it's possible. They say your chances of being eaten by a shark on a subway are never quite at zero. So there's always a possibility. So there's always a possibility the General Assembly is actually doing something good. So that's really it. And and backing up the governor and what the governor would stand for. And with Matt Hackenberg, I really believe in Matt's message, which is largely similar to mine. Matt, being a veteran, is he's definitely in support of an organization called Defend the Guard Pennsylvania, which seeks to retract the deployment of the Pennsylvania National Guard short of a declaration of war, so that the National Guard, the PA National Guard, can actually stay in Pennsylvania where they're supposed to be, the way they were originally designed to be, so that they can focus on if there's localized flooding or any kind of natural disasters or any kind of emergencies.
Versus where are they now, Tim?
PA National Guard now, I believe, is mostly deployed at an undisclosed location, which I believe has a lot of sand. We'll say.
So not PA.
Not so much Pennsylvania, no.
Okay, not in the plateaus. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, not in the contiguous 48.
Well, I think we're seeing right now, and we've had a couple of guests here talk about Defend the Guard. So this for past members of the audience, they're familiar with that conversation. For rather new members of the audience, please go back and listen to those episodes. But no, this is definitely something I think we're going to see right now moving forward. Like you're not going to say a takeover of libertarian ideals immediately, right? And it never comes all at once, but it's going to take a little bit of time. It's how to eat the elephant one bite at a time. And we're seeing the chink in the armor, and this has become apparent after COVID. You can't. It's just like in Star Wars, where Princess Leia is talking to Tarkin, and she says, "Is the tighter you squeeze your fist, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers." That is by nature the way that freedom works. And this it quite literally, freedom is science. That's where the freedom is science line comes from over at the Brian Nichols Show shop over on Proud Libertarian. Dr. Adrian Bajan talks about this with constructive law, and that anything in life and anything in nature, it will do so in a way that will be the easiest way to get to whatever path it's going towards. So freedom in its very essence is nature. It is science. It is the basic operating procedure for every living, non-living, just existing thing out there. And anything that we try to do opposite to it, it will always find a way back. So we're seeing this right now, a reversion almost to that freedom, liberty mean. And it's exciting because I think more people are starting to get into that conversation. They're starting to have the conversation who typically were maybe sitting on the sidelines or not even in tune with what was happening. They were just kind of, they were out there with their little drones doing their own little thing. And then all of a sudden one day they took off the hat, and now all of a sudden they're open up to a brand new world. So Tim, if they are open to a brand new world, they just happen to live in the Keystone State. They're over in Pennsylvania, my former state, for just about 7 years or so. And they want to go ahead and get involved and support your candidacy for lieutenant governor. What can they do to go ahead and support you? And is there any way they can go ahead and financially support you as well as you pursue your endeavor to be lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania?
Oh, thanks for that, Brian. So the easiest way is tim4pa.com. That's the website. That's where you can find all of our information, contact information, where we're going to be, awesome media appearances like this. But you can also go to tim4pa.com/donate if you'd like to throw a couple of bucks at us. We're not funded by the mega corporations like the old dying parties are. They say, what's the difference between donating to a Democrat or Republican and donating to a Libertarian. If you donate to a Democrat or Republican, you expect a favor. If you donate to a Libertarian, you expect results. And that's what we're about, results. So, $1 with us is equivalent to $1,000 with them. We make every dollar count. So timforpa.com/donate. You can also go, if you like Liberty branded merch, timforpa.com/shop. We have t-shirts, hats. We're getting some etched glass, bumper stickers, yard signs, all that stuff's going to be there. But the big takeaway is timforpa.com, or if you're on the Twitter, it's Tim4PA, or I guess at Tim4PA. And on the Facebook, it's McMaster LT Governor 2022.
Perfect. And what we'll do, Tim, we'll make it easier for everybody. We'll include all of this in the show notes. What we'll do, folks, click your podcast catcher artwork there for the Brian Nichols Show. It'll bring you to briannicholsshow.com, where today's episode can be found, along with all of the social media links, all of the bio, and, by the way, the entire transcript of today's episode. Oh, plus all 500 plus episodes of the Brian Nichols Show available for your listening and viewing pleasure. But that being said, folks, thank you for joining us on the episode. Tim, final thoughts or words of wisdom for the audience as we wrap things up today on Monday?
The biggest thing we have now is it was 8 words, and they're all two-letter words that was given to me. If it is to be, it is to be us. So we need to focus on us and hashtag make Pennsylvania free again.
Please. Yes. We don't need more folks like me leaving PA. We need more folks making PA free. So please do that indeed. Folks, if you enjoyed today's episode, please go ahead and give it a share. And when you do, go ahead and give yours truly a shout at B Nichols Liberty. And by the way, if you enjoyed today's episode, well, you're going to love yesterday's episode, but actually over here on YouTube aired today because I wasn't allowed to put my clip I had about The Office. So that became, they got copyright struck by NBC. Can you believe that, Tim? I couldn't believe it. I
can't believe that, actually.
I wasn't even using it like in a bad way. I was using it for comedic purposes. So I guess that's a podcast exclusive. But if you want to go ahead and check out our awesome conversation with the professor, Chris Goizetta, about the top 3 things that libertarians do to scare away the liberty curious, well, it's going to be right here. Oh, I hit my microphone right here. There we go, below me in here on YouTube. But otherwise, folks, thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Brian Nichols Show. With that being said, it's Brian Nichols signing off for Tim McMaster. He's running for Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. We'll see you tomorrow.
Listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.